Draco Malfoy, and the year when everyone suddenly paid attention to him. By Draco will hear about this. Chapter 6. Just a little bit of luck.
So you want to tell me that after 2 weeks of seeing each other constantly over the holidays, you still haven't managed to sneak a kiss?
Hermione told him sternly, fixing him with an expression of disappointment rivaling Professor McGonagall on her best days across the Gryffindor table the first morning after returning to school for the new year. Draco shushed her half-heartedly, though they were taking their breakfast early to catch up and none of their other friends were present yet, so there was no danger of being overheard.
It just never worked out, okay?
Draco muttered, not meeting her eyes. It wasn't for lack of trying, I assure you.
You two are impossible,
Hermione sighed, shaking her head.
I'm so close to locking you into a broom cupboard to get it over with.
That's too cliché for you, Draco teased. You would never be that unimaginative. Hermione glowered at him, and Draco decided not to try her patience. Instead, he decided to deflect.
Have you seen the notices this morning? He asked. Apparition lessons?
I did!
Hermione nodded, her eyes lighting up in interest, and Draco knew his ruse had worked.
I'm so excited about those! I've been waiting to learn how to apparate. It seems terribly useful.
Definitely, Draco agreed.
I mean, the Flute Network is nice as it goes, but it is a little restrictive and hard to use unnoticed. Apparition will be a necessary skill in the upcoming war. We'll need to work hard.
I guess you're right,
Hermione nodded, frowning.
It's supposed to be pretty hard, though.
I think they mostly say that to scare you.
Draco rolled his eyes.
If it were indeed so hard, there wouldn't be so many people with a license. I think the problem is more that it's dangerous if done wrong.
Hermione hummed thoughtfully, but didn't answer because at that moment Harry and Weasley entered the great hall. He could tell the exact instant she noticed them because she flushed and started shoving food into her mouth. Draco suppressed a sigh, so the 2-week separation had done nothing to make her forget about Weasley after all. On his second night back, Harry was already called to Dumbledore's office for their first Dark Lord history lesson of the new year. Harry picked Hermione and Draco up from the Gryffindor table the next morning for a walk across the snow-covered school grounds to fill them in on everything new he had discovered, which had become perhaps predictably more and more gruesome. Maybe with his own family situation, the murder of his grandfather Marvolo Gant, and the fact that he had framed his Uncle Morphin for the crime shouldn't even have made Draco feel as shivery to hear about. After all, his own father and aunt were currently safely locked away in Azkaban, and he would never hesitate to remind anyone that they had more than deserved their fate. Therefore, he was far from the picture-perfect pureblood he had been raised to be. Family bonds, while still important to him, did not stand over everything else. Still, though, hearing the way the Dark Lord had cold-bloodedly played his family for his own purposes, be it revenge or a deeper motive, left Draco feeling sick to his stomach.
Dumbledore showed me another memory after,
Harry told them once he had run them through the basic points of the Gant case. It was clear that Harry wanted to really speak about that next memory with them.
It was provided by Slughorn.
Oh,
Hermione said, perking up.
Slughorn taught Voldemort as a boy.
He did,
Harry confirmed, frowning.
And apparently he took quite a liking to him. Though Dumbledore assured me that wasn't unusual throughout his school days. Most teachers adored him, it seems. Either he was incredibly charming, or all the teachers were fools,
Draco noted, raising his eyebrows.
Looking at Slughorn, I'm leaning towards this second option.
Harry snorted, but Hermione frowned at him.
We know that Voldemort is incredibly smart, Draco, she admonished. I'm sure he knew exactly how to sweet-talk the teachers into doing what he wanted, into believing what he needed them to believe.
Yeah, well,
Harry sighed.
It looks like he got what he wanted from Slughorn, but he won't admit to it, because he meddled with the memory he gave Dumbledore.
Excuse me? Draco asked, incredulous.
Yup,
Harry confirmed grimly.
The memory shows a meeting of the Slug Club throughout Voldemort's school days, and he was present.
Well, doesn't that make you proud to be a chosen member? Draco deadpanned, and he received a glare from Hermione for his efforts.
And he lingered behind to speak to Slughorn afterwards.
Harry continued, paying Draco's words in mind.
And he asked him what he knew about Horcruxes.
Draco froze in recognition of the word, the implications of that question spinning in his mind. Hermione, on the other hand, blinked at Harry in confusion.
What did he say?
That's where the memory starts becoming fishy.
Harry shrugged.
He said he didn't know anything about Horcruxes and wouldn't tell him if he did. but it was obvious that the statement had been added later.
He must be determined to hide what really happened if he went through such lengths to hide it.
Hermione frowned, pursing her lips. And for good reason, Draco noted, his voice uncharacteristically thin, causing both his friends to turn and look at him. If we really give the Dark Lord the information to... Bloody hell! What? Harry asked, staring at him at the same moment as Hermione asked, a little more sharply,
Do you know what Horcruxes are?
I do, Draco confirmed. I came across them in my readings at the manor. When I was researching alchemic phenomenons, it's really dark stuff. But it would explain a lot about how the Dark Lord is still alive after everything that's happened. Draco took an unsteady breath, feeling like he was going to faint. Blimey!
Draco,
Harry said, his voice rather more gentle than the situation called for, and then both his hands were on Draco's shoulders, and he forced him to stop walking and look at him.
you're doing that thing again, where your brain is 5 steps ahead of everyone else and you're freaking out all by yourself. Catch us up. What do Horcruxes do?
They are parts of your soul, Draco said, his voice frail and cracking at the last word. You split your soul into 2 pieces through murder, so that you can't die when you're killed. The other part of your soul will stay unharmed and keep you alive, or, well, Draco gulped. Unharmed is the wrong word, because you'll be mutilating your soul once you tear it apart. You'll never be the same.
What happens to the other part of your soul?
Hermione asked, her voice barely above a whisper.
Does it just float around space, or...
No, Draco shook his head. You bind it to an object or a living thing.
Like a ring?
Harry asked, blinking. Yes, Draco frowned, scanning his face. Why?
Voldemort stole a ring from his grandfather,
Harry told him.
and now Dumbledore has it. I saw it in his office.
Oh, Draco said rather weakly.
So this is it.
Harry muttered, shaking his head.
Voldemort created a Horcrux.
Can it be destroyed?
Hermione asked, turning to Draco. How am I supposed to know? Draco called defensively. I only stumbled across the term. I never thought to research it further.
Well, we can do it now, Hermione said, determined. I can get permission to search the restricted section, under some pretext, of course. No one will suspect a thing.
Dumbledore wants me to persuade Slughorn to give me the real memory,
Harry told him, blinking as if he was remembering just now.
Oh,
Hermione frowned, turning to him.
I think that's going to be difficult, Harry. You have to be very careful about how you approach Slughorn. Think out a strategy.
Ron reckons I should just hang back after potions this afternoon,
Harry muttered. Draco rolled his eyes at Weasley's unqualified advice, but Hermione, maybe predictably, freaked.
Oh, well, if Bonbon thinks that, you better do it,
she called, glaring, her face flushed.
After all, when has Bonbon's judgment ever been faulty?
Hermione, can't you... No! She yelled, and off she went, leaving Harry and Draco in her wake. Draco raised an eyebrow at Harry. One, he asked.
Lavender's pet name for him.
Harry offered his lip corking. Honestly? Draco sighed. This boy really has no taste, does he? He thinks only with his prick.
Please.
Harry moaned, looking pained.
Don't ever mention Ron's prick in front of me again.
Draco snorted, rolling his eyes. He sobered again quickly, though, when he remembered their previous conversation. I can't believe it, he muttered. Bloody Horcruxes! As if I don't have enough nightmares about this war.
I guess if we know what we're up against, though, we can fight it.
Harry shrugged, sounding hopeful.
That's something.
I guess, Draco frowned. Though before we can do that, we need information. And for that, you need Slughorn to spill. And as much as I know you love your dear One-One, I firmly advise against taking this lightly.
What do you think I should do then?
Harry asked, looking at him pleadingly. Draco frowned. I'm not sure yet, actually. Maybe, for now, do nothing. Sweet talk him a little in potions today. Use that book of yours to brew up a great potion and stay behind to chat a little, but mention nothing of that memory. Say yes if he invites you to one of those meetings of his, and then we'll see.
That doesn't sound like a very solid strategy,
Harry pointed out, a little sulky. It's called laying the groundwork. Draco rolled his eyes. Trust a Slytherin for once. Cunning is my field, not yours. Surprisingly enough, Harry did trust him. The potions class that afternoon seemed to ruin their plan at first. They were applying Gulp-Balat's third law to create antidotes to common poisons, a drawn-out, menial, and complicated process which the Half-Blood Prince's book at first glance seemed to offer no useful shortcut for. Only in the last moment did Harry manage a rather brilliant save by procuring a Bezoar and offering it to Slughorn as an alternative solution, a bold move that earned him kudos with their teacher for its cheek. Hermione quite predictably was furious with him, while Draco was impressed with his resourcefulness.
You shouldn't encourage him,
Hermione hissed as they walked out of the classroom together, leaving Harry to sweet-talk Slughorn as agreed upon.
Your influence on him is far greater than anyone else's, and you just take him on.
If you haven't noticed, Draco told her tersely, we needed Slughorn in a good mood. He needs to eat out of Harry's hand, so we'll hand over that damn memory. So please get off your high horse. I know it's frustrating for you to not be top of the class, but there are things more important than your frail academic pride. Hermione flushed a bright scarlet at that and fell silent. They walked down the corridor without speaking, and only when they had almost reached the entrance hall did Hermione ask a little stiffly,
So, you and Harry already worked out a plan to get that memory?
Not as such, Draco shrugged. I told him to lay groundwork until we come up with something. I thought we might all get together and brainstorm later, but if you're going to be all prickly, I might not invite you along.
Fine, I get it,
Hermione sighed, frowning.
I'll behave myself.
I'd appreciate that, Draco said pointedly. After all, we have enough to worry about, don't you think?
Hermione conceded with a deep sigh and a nod. Harry, Hermione, and Draco met up in some secluded corner of the library later that evening under the ruse of homework, discussing strategies to outwit Slughorn in muted voices.
I think the best thing is for me to try the way Voldemort did it. I'll just go to Slughorn's next party and hang back after to chat, and then I'll persuade him to tell me.
Hermione, though, was frowning at him.
Don't you think that might trigger some bad memories for him in return? She argued. I don't know, Harry. I don't think it will be that easy.
Then do you have a better idea?
He challenged.
I don't know.
Hermione frowned.
I just think you'll have to get very lucky for it to work out like that.
Draco stared at her, something about her choice of words setting his mind in movement. You're right, he breathed, blinking. Harry needs to get lucky.
Pardon?
The Felix Felicis, Draco pointed out. Take some for the party. Oh, Harry said, grimacing. He didn't answer for a moment, then he muttered,
I don't know, Draco, I was sort of saving it.
What on earth is more important than this memory, Harry?
Hermione admonished. Harry did not answer. Neither did he look at them. He just chewed on his lip until Hermione waved her hand in front of his face to get his attention again.
Harry?
She asked.
Are you still with us?
What?
He snapped out of it, blinking rapidly and flushing. His eyes traveled to Draco once before resolutely settling on Hermione again.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, thought Draco, and willed himself not to blush as well.
I think Draco's right, you know,
Hermione told Harry sternly.
It makes sense for you to use the potion for this occasion. It might help twist the circumstances in your favor.
Fine.
Harry sighed, frowning again.
Fine, I'll think about it, okay?
Slughorn's first party of the year took place the last weekend of January. Until about 2 hours before the actual event, when Draco last saw him, Harry was vague about the whole Felix Felicis deal, trying to find ways around it and driving Draco up the walls with it, until the Slytherin set down his foot and told him that if he didn't take the potion and he screwed it up, there would likely be no second chance, so he'd better know what he was bloody doing. He had no idea what Harry's decision ended up being, and it made him feel more than a little anxious. To distract himself, he holed himself up at the library all night until Madame Pince tracked him down in his corner and stared him down with eagle's eyes, silently throwing him out. Satchel full of checked-out books and arms full of notes, he made his way down the dimly lit corridors, reaching the stairs that led towards the entrance hall. He just set his foot onto the first step when it slipped. Crap! He thought, already seeing himself crashing down the whole way into the hard stone floor before, quite unexpectedly, an arm slung around his waist, pulling him back against a firm chest and keeping him from falling. His notes went flying as Draco's hands instinctively reached out for the body holding him, trying to steady himself. A familiar scent reached Draco's nose and his heartbeat picked up. Harry? He muttered, breathless.
Careful.
Harry told him, and Draco could hear the smile in his voice.
You're not usually so clumsy.
I'm not, Draco agreed, flushing both in embarrassment and from the proximity of the other boy. In this position, Harry was all but pressed up against him, his arms still wrapped around him. I don't know what that was about.
Maybe the castle was playing tricks on you, Harry suggested. It's been known to happen.
Maybe, Draco allowed, and with a steadying breath, he twisted in Harry's embrace, turning to face him. He expected Harry to let go of him once Draco set about to move, but he didn't. If anything, both arms now settled more firmly around his waist, as if afraid that with one wrong step, Draco would stumble backwards and down the steps. Green eyes met with gray, and Draco found that he'd forgotten how to breathe. So, he brought out, clearing his throat. How was the party?
A success.
Harry smiled.
I got the memory. I was just on my way to tell you.
Oh! Draco breathed, astonished. That's amazing, Harry! Congrats!
Thanks.
He smiled.
No trouble at all. And now that that's done, I wanted to run something by you.
Oh? Draco said again, because apparently he was very eloquent tonight. And what's that?
The next Hogsmeade trip.
Harry replied, making Draco blink in confusion at the sudden turn of the conversation.
It's on March 1st. Will you go with me?
We always go to Hogsmeade together, Harry. Draco blurted out, uncomprehending. Well, that is, if you're not going to hang out with Weasley. Wait, isn't it his birthday that day? Draco realized, his mind reeling.
It is,
Harry confirmed, shrugging.
But he'll be on a date with Lavender anyway, so I can bloody well go on a date on my own.
Draco opened his mouth, but found he had no words. He closed it again, heat rushing his face.
Diesel got your tongue?
Harry teased, unexpectedly cheeky. Did you just ask me out on a date? Draco checked, only to be sure. Like, properly?
Yes.
Harry confirmed.
I think it was about time, wasn't it?
Oh! Draco said, his voice high. Yeah, maybe. Harry smiled, having the grace to patiently wait while Draco had his internal breakdown.
So?
He asked.
Do you want to go?
Yes! Draco nodded. Yes, I really do!
Good.
Harry beamed! That's brilliant. And when Harry finally let go of him, Draco felt so unsteady that for a moment he wondered if he was indeed going to tumble down the stairs. But Harry had already pulled out his wand and was summoning Draco's spilt notes for him, so Draco did his best to get a grip on himself and his body. At least he managed to make his arms work as Harry handed him the stack of papers, reaching for it and clinging to it like a lifeline. Thanks, he whispered.
Good night then.
Harry smiled, and before Draco knew what was happening, Harry had leaned in and pressed his lips to Draco's cheek. It was really chaste and over as soon as it had begun, but it left Draco completely stumped, and all he could do was stare after Harry uncomprehendingly as the other boy smirked at him and took off. Draco watched him all the way down the corridor, not moving, and only when Harry was out of sight did he lift the trembling fingers of his free hand to the cheek Harry had just kissed. Draco had no recollection of how he made it back to his dormitory, especially without falling flat on his face, but when he did, he went straight for the enchanted parchment he shared with Hermione, as well as quill and ink, and threw himself onto the bed, drawing the curtains. Harry asked me on a date to Hogsmeade in March, and he kissed me on the cheek. I can't breathe. I think I'm going mad. He stared at his message, praying with all of his might for Hermione to be awake and inside of her own roll of parchment, but thank Merlin the answer came barely a minute later. Yes! Finally! About time! Oh my god! I'm so happy for you, Draco! Wow, all caps and exclamation marks, you must be thrilled. Shut it! I'd be screaming if you were here! When did this happen? After your slug club! I was on my way to my common room from the library, and suddenly there he was! He wanted to tell me he got the memory, it seemed. He got the memory? Yep. Thank Merlin, looks like that Felix Felicis was not wasted.
At that reply, Draco held in the euphoria in him dimming a little. He had forgotten all about the potion. He chewed his lip and thought back on Harry's behavior, on the uncharacteristic confidence and his straightforwardness and suddenly felt very small. Do you think him asking me out was motion-induced?
Oh my god, Draco!
I mean, it wasn't exactly acting like himself, Hermione. What if he didn't mean it?
Don't be ridiculous! Of course he means it! You two have been dancing around each other for months! He couldn't be more obvious in liking you! You, until recently, had accepted the fact that he liked you, if I may remind you!
Yes, I know. Still, he might not have actually wanted to ask me out. It doesn't mean anything if he was drugged at the time.
You had an O in your potion hours, Draco. You know as well as I do that Felix Felicis is not that kind of potion. Yes, it can make you feel euphoria and confidence, overly so if taken in large doses, but Harry only took a few drops. I watched him take it. It does not create feelings or desires that aren't there. Most likely, Harry rode the high of getting that memory from Slughorn and used it to ask you out. There is nothing sinister about it. Don't tell yourself otherwise.
Draco took a deep, steadying breath, comforting himself with the solid facts Hermione was presenting him with. She was right. Felix Felicis wasn't that kind of potion. This wasn't Ambertouch after all. You're right, he answered at last. Sorry, old habits.
You're impossible, she replied. I've never seen anyone as reluctant to be happy as you.
Draco rolled his eyes, though he figured that maybe she had a point. I'll try not to freak out anymore, he promised.
You'd better not,
Hermione returned, and you could practically see her scowl through the parchment.
or I'll have to dose you with the remaining Felix Felicis until Harry snogged those doubts out of you.
Draco snorted, shaking his head at the parchment. How is this my life? He wrote, not really expecting an answer.
Stop overthinking and for once just enjoy.
The next morning at breakfast, Harry sat with Weasley and carefully avoided looking in Draco's direction. Who made his scrambled eggs had awakened, turned to bitter-tasting dust on his tongue. He's regretting it, he muttered to Hermione, horrified. It was the potion speaking last night. Hermione's answering expression was one of deep annoyance.
He doesn't regret it, and the potion didn't make him do anything, she snapped. Stop faking yourself out. He's just embarrassed knowing him.
He's not even looking at me, Draco insisted.
Yes, because Harry can't deal with emotions for the life of him.
Hermione rolled her eyes.
Honestly, boys, I swear to God.
Draco bit his lip and threw a discreet look in Harry's direction again. Weasley was animatedly talking to him about one thing or another, but Harry didn't seem to be quite paying attention to him. He was idly moving his sausage from one side of the plate to the other without eating it. And then, quite unexpectedly, he looked up, meeting Draco's gaze dead on. Both of them averted their eyes immediately. Draco felt his face heat up and cursed himself.
Merlin, stop acting pathetic.
Hermione hissed, having watched the scene through narrowed eyes.
This is ridiculous.
Hermione, Draco muttered through clenched teeth. Please, for once in your life, just shut up! She looked at him disapprovingly, but granted him the favor. There was a Quidditch match that day, Hufflepuff versus Ravenclaw, and Draco had agreed to spend it at the Slytherin stands with his team and Hermione in tow. Hermione initially looked over her shoulder a lot, sensing the hostile stares from some of his housemates, but the welcoming attitude of his teammates soon distracted her from her reluctance. You know, Viola noted mildly as the stands began to fill around them, we might well be the most unpopular Slytherin house team to ever exist. Blood traitors, fraternizing with the Gryffindors, is all quite scandalous, really. Yeah, especially considering how successful we are. Yatten grinned. Right, Zoe snorted. How dare we? Draco chuckled, biting his lip. They were indeed leading the house championship by a fair bit at the moment. After their victories against Gryffindor and Ravenclaw before the break, the other house teams had yet to catch up to them, and if Ravenclaw lost today, they were already well out of the race for the cup. Draco was drawn out of his thoughts when Ryan gasped rather dramatically in his ear, leaning in to speak to him from his position behind him.
It's about to get more scandalous, he stage whispered. The boy who lived to turn heads has entered Slytherin territory. I repeat, we have the Gryffindor Quidditch captain on the Slytherin stands.
Draco blinked and looked up just in time to see Harry make his way down their row, eyes stubbornly cast down, ignoring the glares he got from virtually everyone but Draco's group as he slowly pushed forward. Draco's throat suddenly felt very dry. What in Salazar's name was Harry doing here?
When Harry finally reached them, he squeezed in between Draco and Abbas, clearing his throat. Draco just stared at him incredulously.
I was tired of playing fifth wheel to Won and Lav.
Harry shrugged, his lips twitching as he took in Draco's expression.
You don't mind, do you?
No! Draco said quickly. Of course not! I didn't expect you to follow me here, of all places!
You sit with the Gryffindors all the time.
Harry shrugged.
Why shouldn't I come to sit with you for a change?
Draco smiled at that, deciding not to point out all the obvious reasons why the reverse situation was quite more problematic, and accepting it for the affectionate gesture it was. On his other side, he could feel Hermione radiating smugness. The teams emerged from their dressing rooms then, and noise exploded around them. For a while, they focused on the match, and Draco went back and forth between watching and diving into conversation with his teammates, discussing the weaknesses they could spot in the Hufflepuff players' game. After a while, Harry leaned into his personal space, catching his attention.
Draco,
he said, just loud enough that he could understand what Harry was saying, but so low that it was sure to be lost in the noise of the crowd.
About last night.
Draco gulped, not daring to look at Harry. Yes? He asked.
I'm sorry if I was a little forward,
Harry said, sounding uncomfortable.
I wouldn't have acted this way if it wasn't for the potion. I feel a little silly now.
Draco gulped, his heart sinking. Do you regret it? Draco asked, trying to keep his voice level, relieved when Harry immediately shook his head and turned his face to catch his eyes.
Merlin, no!
He assured him, sounding alarmed.
I've been wanting to ask you out for ages. I thought you knew.
Draco flushed. He gulped, unsure how to answer. He was grateful when Harry spoke first, saving him the embarrassment of stumbling over his words.
No,
Harry shook his head.
I don't regret it at all. I'm glad I finally asked you. Part of me still can't believe you said yes.
Draco couldn't help but smile at that. He gently elbowed him into the side. I wasn't ever going to refuse, idiots, he told him fondly.
I'm glad to hear that.
Harry smiled back ever so tentatively, and Draco wondered if he was going to melt right here on the stands.
Did you tell Hermione?
Yes, Draco replied, blinking. Shouldn't I have?
No, it's fine,
Harry said quickly.
I didn't know how to tell Ron, and then I thought maybe it's better to keep it on the low for now, at least until we actually go on that date. I mean, it's still a couple of weeks.
Draco frowned, not quite sure what to say.
It's just, people are always talking.
Harry muttered, a little desperate.
And I'd hate for them to get all in our business before we even figured ourselves out.
Ravenclaw scored, catching the lead. Draco stared into the distance, trying to find an appropriate answer. So you want to hide? Draco checked, trying to keep his tone neutral, but there must have been something in his tone that alarmed Harry because he looked at him sharply.
No,
he said firmly.
I'm not hiding anything.
He scanned Draco's face and then added,
Don't you dare think I'm ashamed or anything, alright? That's not it. You should know me better than that.
All right, Draco muttered, gulping. He forced himself to meet Harry's eyes as he spoke those next words. It's just, I'm done hiding when I feel. I've done that long enough. Harry's eyes softened and his fingers brushed Draco's.
I'm not asking you to,
he muttered.
I just don't want to flaunt it until we figure things out. This is all so new, and the thought of people getting all into our faces about it before we even went on our first date scares me. You're too important for me to screw this up.
Draco smiled at that, and he hooked his pinky finger around Harry's. All right, then, he agreed. We'll keep it on the low until Hogsmeade.
Thanks.
Harry breathed, and Draco saw his eyes wandering to his lips for a moment before he shook himself and directed his gaze back to the pitch, blinking rapidly. Draco smiled, feeling warm in a way he had never felt before, despite the cold January weather.